you've got questions for me,
well,
I can answer them.
I grew up reading comics. My brother was a huge comic book collector. I mean, he's got hundreds of thousands of comic books at home. And I always, when I see a interpretation of a book or interpretation,
I think this help inspire conversation.
now, how do you feel? You know, with the visual part of it, when you're so used to describing the visual in words,
yeah.
How do you feel looking at it like this? Like, you know, is it always what you want it to be? Is it always what you thought it should be?
Actually, I just love, I think writing for comics is more fun than any other kind of writing. That doesn't mean I'm good at it, or that that's where I do my best work. It just means that that's what I find most satisfying to do. I think in part because comics allow me to play to my strengths and ignore my weaknesses. The things I like to write best are dialogue and action. Getting the language for, you know, I'm very attentive to how my language sounds on the page. You know, I'm a guy who will spend all morning writing a 100-word email. So, you know, it's really the way a paragraph or a page sounds is really important to me. But writing a comic, I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. I can let go of all that and do the parts of storytelling that are really fun, which is defining the characters through the things they say and the things they do. And then some other guy has to sweat over actually bringing the visuals to life. And I have to say that Gabe does an incredible job.
Perfect.
Yes, Steve, what's up?
Do you have the end in mind, or does it?
That's a really good question.
Change.
Lock and Key was sold to the movies. There's an option on it and everything. And no sooner had it been sold than they called me up and they wanted to know how it ends. And I don't know, because that's not really how I work. Like, I've never worked by an outline in my life. There are things I know. There's one thing I didn't mention because I didn't want to get confusing. There are all these doors in Key House. There's one door somewhere, the black door, that's never supposed to be opened. And naturally there's a thing that wants to open it. And the thing is down in the well, out in the little well house. And there are things I know. I know where the key to open that door is. I know where the door is hidden. And I have a really good idea about everything that happens for the next dozen issues. But the whole series is going to run another 24 issues. And then there's going to be a final graphic novel to tie it up to close out the story. And I don't really know how everything's going to end. And I don't know if that's disappointing for readers or not. I mean, sometimes I think readers want to hear that there's a really cohesive plan. And sometimes I think maybe they're glad to hear that the characters are sort of writing their own story. I don't know.
Now, to go with that, when the creators of Lost, to go back to Lost,
yeah.
They didn't know what direction they were going into until they had an end date, so they had a set.
Yeah, I actually think that the creators of Lost didn't know how they were going to end it until it was too late.
So does the amount of issues now that you have give you an idea of how long you have to end the, I mean?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think it's interesting. Lost is a really good. How many people watch Lost? Okay, some. Well, it's been the first 2 seasons were 2 seasons of great TV, but you know the problem is, and I think I'm still in the minority because I think a lot of people still really love the show, and it pains me to say I don't really like it that much anymore because one of my favorite writers in the world works for it. But you know the thing is, when a story is successful, it begins with chaos and complexity, and gradually it sort of narrows things down into elegance and clarity. And I think that's the natural direction for most stories. But in serial television, too often it works the other way. You begin with a really clear, simple premise. In this case, a plane crashes on an unlikely desert island, an unlikely island in the South Pacific that has magical powers, you know, supernatural forces on it. It's a great opening concept. But then things gradually get more and more complicated with all these subplots and too many characters, and before you know it, you're totally confused. You know, there's no way to tie it all up in a satisfying way. I think that's sort of what's happened to Lost a little bit. But with Lock and Key, I wasn't sure people would be interested. I thought there was a chance it might fail. So I always had I always had a shortcut to the ending, and that hasn't really changed. So even though I don't know how it ends, I know how to point it to the ending pretty quickly. And even now, I'm already more interested in closing doors than opening them. You know, even though I still got another 24 issues to write, you know, I'm more interested in answering the questions that have already been raised as opposed to raising new questions, which I think really can get you into trouble. There's already enough questions just in the first 6 issues.